morning, Manju ma'am.
Good morning. रेखा रेखा किधर है? कहाँ घूमने गई है?
Madam is celebrating World Environment Day.
World Environment Day.
I think yes.
yes. ये जगह पर जाएंगे हम लोग. ये बंद है ना?
We have many plans. Hope this works out at least the next year.
मंजू, ये ना उत्तराखंड का है सीन. आवाज नहीं आ रही, आवाज नहीं तेरा. म्यूट.
लाइव कर दिया है. लाइव.
लाइव नहीं है.
We are live now. I think.
We are live. She's created that.
Yeah, Asha ma'am has joined. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning. All.
Madam.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Shall we start?
Yes, if it is time.
It's 11 o'clock, yeah. Shall we start?
We have just now shared the link on various groups. I think we should give at least a couple of minutes for the participants to join. Maybe 2 minutes or so.
Yes,
Yeah.
madam. Yes.
Yeah.
Malti ma'am, please share it in all the groups.
Yeah, 2 minutes, yes. And after 2 minutes, I think, Savita, you can start.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have shared it, sir, on the Telegram group and other groups. I'm also sharing.
Shall we begin?
Yes, please.
It's 11. Rekha ma'am, may I?
just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, before we begin, we can just have a pic, because everybody is there, then principal madam may, get busy. So let's have a photograph first before we begin. Please put on your videos.
All right, ma'am.
Who's taking the pic? Malti? One of you just take it.
Yes, ma'am, I have taken it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
All
you
the
can
best.
Okay, begin. Yeah.
All the best to all of you.
Oh, Madhuri, you have come just now.
Thank you.
Wait, Madhuri, if you can put your video on. Madhuri, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Please take a pic.
Yes, done, ma'am.
Thank you,
all the best to your team.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Savita, start.
All the
Yes.
best.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Welcome, welcome, and hearty welcome to a national level webinar on paperless office and green campus initiatives organized by IQSC and NAC Criteria 7 team by Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College, Ghatkopar, Mumbai. It is not yours nor mine, it is ours. So protect your mother who nourished you. Happy World Environment Day. Be the change you want to see in the world. Each one can make a difference. So let's go green and be the one. The environment is where we all meet, where we all have a mutual interest. It is the one thing all of us share. On this very precious and auspicious day of World Environment, let's begin our today's webinar on paperless office and green campus initiatives. I welcome wholeheartedly our respected Madam Principal, Dr. Asha Menon. I welcome Madam Dr. Rekha Randive, Vice Principal of Faculty of Home Science, and also the criteria head of our Team 7. I welcome Madam Dr. Manju Prabha, the Vice Principal of Faculty of Commerce. I welcome Madam Madhuri Vaidya, Vice Principal from Faculty of Arts. I welcome IQSC Coordinator Mr. Raju Chauhan sir. I also welcome all the coordinators from faculties of BAF, BAMM, BCA, MA, MCOM, BMS, Swadhar, etc. I also welcome all the dignitaries from other institutions. I welcome all teaching, non-teaching staff, students, parents, and well-wishers. A warm welcome to all of you. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Rekha Randive Madam, the head Criteria 7 team, to deliver concept note of a webinar on paperless office and green campus initiatives. Over to you, Madam Rekha.
Thank you, Savita.
Welcome, ma'am.
Happy World Environment Day. Traditionally, learning has always been about pen and paper. As you are aware, the world consumes about 400 million metric tons of paper. This requires 24 trees to produce 1 ton of fresh, non-recycled paper for non-recycled office paper. For centuries, men have tried using various methods and tools to make their work more efficient and faster. So, for more than 4 decades, we have spoken of the concept of paperless office. Paperless office should be seen as an immediate project with all the organizations and the initiatives for the application of new technologies in offices and colleges can contribute towards sustainable development. But this is possible only at the administrative will, since it is necessary to reform administrative processes. By going paperless is itself a green initiative. But by going green does not just help take care of Mother Earth. Many people are now conscious of their roles in mitigating climate change, which is brought on by the reckless consumption of fossil fuels by human beings, which being the largest or the biggest reason for carbon sinks in the world. So we need to find ways to reduce the consumption of paper. So this could be a great way to reduce our organization carbon footprints. For doing this, the schools and the colleges should come forward and contribute in their own way. It makes true sense to make our college paperless and green. We can monitor it by regular audits and help in reducing the carbon footprints, thus enhancing the quality of life of the students also. It is a form of social responsibility. This can become a good publicity to our organization too. So let's go paperless and be a responsible citizen of India. Thank you. Over
Thank you
to
very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Rekha Randive, madam. This has almost clarified the concept behind our today's gathering and our green initiative. I especially welcome our today's resource person for the day, Dr. Roshni Udyavar, madam. She is there with us. Special welcome to you, ma'am. Now, I would like to call upon our respected Madam Principal, Dr. Asha Menon, to guide us. Over to you, Madam Principal.
Thank you, Savita Madam. Good morning and nature-friendly greetings to everyone for the national webinar on paperless office and green campus initiatives organized by IQAC of Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College, Mumbai. I would like to welcome the speaker of today, Dr. Roshni Udyavar Yehuda, principals, vice principals, coordinators, teaching and non-teaching staff, and students to this webinar on paperless office and green campus initiatives. On the occasion of World Environment Day 2021, the United Nations is all set to declare 2021 to 2030 as a decade of ecosystem restoration with the slogan of reimagine, recreate, restore. With this initiative, the United Nations is aiming to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystem on every continent and in every ocean. It is essential to advocate for a greener environment and conservation of nature. The importance of environment does not resolve just around Global Environment Day. It is important to make the environment a part of our lifestyle. We must strive hard to protect and conserve the 5 elements of nature. The present times are giving us a call to come forward for nature conservation. Therefore, we should strive for a green campus. A green campus is a place where environmental friendly practices and education combine to provide sustainable and eco-friendly practices in the campus. The green campus concept offers an institution the opportunity to take a lead in redefining its environmental culture and developing new paradigms by creating sustainable solutions to environmental, social, and economic needs of the mankind. In our college, office and administration department take steps to ensure minimum wastage of resources, especially paper. The practice of the administration is such that paper usage is limited only to unavoidable needs. In order to further minimize wastage of paper and thereby reduce the carbon footprint, the college used one-side paper for all their printing needs. We as an institution need to do more, and I'm eagerly waiting to hear from the expert what more we can do to help the environment sustain itself for future. Wishing the webinar the very best, and I congratulate the IQAC team for organizing this webinar. Thank you so much. Over to the comparer, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for your blessings and all-time guidance to conduct all these webinars. After this, since we have got the best fitting resource person for the day, I would like to call upon my colleague, Ms. Malti Singh, to introduce our today's resource person, Madam Dr. Roshni Udyavar. Over to you, Ms. Malti.
Thank you, Savita ma'am. It's my proud privilege to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Roshni Uddewar. Dr. Roshni Uddewar is a practicing architect and academician whose core competency lies in energy efficient and environmental design of buildings. Dr. Roshni is a PhD holder in resource management and is a qualified master trainer and empaneled expert on the Energy Conservation Building Code of India awarded by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in February 2015. Dr. Roshni is president of Institute of Environmental Architecture and Research, Mumbai. She is a co-chairman of ASSOCHAM JAM Maharashtra chapter. She is the director of Roshni Uddewar and Associates in Mumbai and advisor of Environment and Sustainability Science and Technology Park, Pune. Dr. Roshni is currently working as the principal investigator for the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India's research project on developing energy efficient and ECDC compliant opaque wall assembly for hot, dry, and warm humid climate. She is a member of All India Town and Country Planning Board AICT. She has worked as a head of Prachna Sansad Institute of Environmental Architecture from June 2013 to July 2017, where she initiated several environmental projects in addition to a postgraduate course on environmental architecture. Dr. Roshni has delivered lectures at the University of Vienna, Austria, and the Arizona State University, USA. She also lectured at New York University, Abu Dhabi, and Hong Kong University. She was part of the United States Agency for International Development, a sponsored Indian delegation to study green buildings in the United States in 2004. As a writer and professional, she has numerous articles and writings to her credit in various journals and books. At the 34th International Conference on Passive and Low Energy Architecture, that is PLIA 2018 Hong Kong, she received the Best Paper Award for the paper co-authored with Dr. Archana Bhatnagar entitled Assessment of Thermodrain System on Thermal Comfort, Study of an Office Building in Nashik, India. She has co-authored the book Survival at a Stake, an anthology of essays by Rashmi Mayur in 2012. She has more than 20 years of academic and professional experience and has traveled widely on professional assignments to more than 20 countries. She is committed to local and global sustainability through creative educational and professional initiatives and appropriate technology with an emphasis on equity, scientific thought, and ecological values. Madam, we are really grateful to having you as our guest speaker for today's session. Thank you so much, Savita ma'am. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Malti ma'am, for the short introduction of our today's resource person. We are really overwhelmed to have such a global personality who is working globally to save the environment. So the ground is yours. I cordially request Madam Roshni to enlighten us how we can have our offices paperless as well as our campus green. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Savita, Professor Malti, and the principal, Dr. Menon, Dr. Rekha Randive. Good morning to all of you as well as all the participants. Warm greetings of the World Environment Day to each and every one of you. We have a very interesting topic today, that is paperless office and green campus. So I'm pleased to share some of my thoughts and also some of my experiences. So you'll see a lot of photographs. The idea is to, see what we can do, not just think of, plan, but also execute in our schools and colleges. So I'll just put up my presentation. So I hope it is seen by everyone. So what I'm going to talk about is today a little bit of background, why Green Campus and paperless office. We will look at what are the concepts in Green Campus, what we can do here. So all of the different components of that, what are the benchmarks and standards that we refer to or we can refer to, what is the process by which this can be accomplished, and what kind of feasibilities that we need to do for the compliance and commissioning. And finally, we'll look at a few case studies in the next 40 minutes or so. And I hope that you can put down your questions, which we can discuss towards the end. So to begin with, we always start with why we are looking at these issues today is because of the increasing carbon footprint. If you look at this map, which is from the National Geographic, you will see these redder areas more towards China, India, somewhat to North Africa, United States. These are the areas which are increasing their carbon footprint. And as developing nation, we are certainly increasing, the carbon emissions as well as our overall energy footprint as well. So this is one of the reasons that we need to look at, changing our current practices. We are fourth in the world today in terms of carbon emissions. And I want to point out to the recent World Meteorological Organization report, which actually gave us what are the impacts, current impacts on the world, whether it is sea level rise, whether it is storm surges, which we ourselves have faced, or is it is ocean acidification. And what they concluded is that if we don't tackle climate change right now, then we are heading for a temperature increase of more than 3 degrees centigrade at the end of the century, and that will have the consequences will be quite drastic, and we can't even imagine the kind of because the whole climate system is going to go astray. We are not new to this. What happened, Tauktae, the cyclone Tauktae was one of the incidents, and it has now been very clearly recognized that there are going to be more and more such incidents on the western coast, which was not frequent. Mostly it was the eastern coast which faced cyclones practically every year, but the number of cyclones, whether it is in Indian coast or whether it is the US coast of the coast of Florida, the number of such incidents and the intensity of precipitation has definitely increased. And what we can do right now is to adapt to these changes while at the same time try to reduce our impact. The larger changes are even more serious and require even more serious consideration. That is the receding of glaciers in the Himalayas, because that affects the Gangetic Plain and of course food security for not just India but the entire Indian subcontinent. So these are some of the background areas. Coming to buildings, because when we talk about campus and as as an architect, we deal with buildings, and buildings are the ones which are in a big way responsible for climate change. If you look at carbon emissions, 30 to 40% of total global greenhouse gas emissions are because of buildings. If you look at the energy use, 1/3 of global energy use, materials, we consume 40 to 50% of the total flow of materials in the global economy. Water, we consume 12%, and this is just what we actually use. We are not counting the water which goes into the building materials, and that's a huge amount. And then, of course, we generate waste, which we are not currently recycling. Very little of it goes back into the system. So this is the current scenario with buildings, which is why we are concerned. So the built environment today is next only to agriculture in its impact on the Earth's ecosystems. And the World Green Building Council, which is looking at how to modify the current building stock and new building stock into green, has very clearly identified that about 39% of all carbon emissions in the world is due to buildings, out of which 28% is directly out of operations. That means lighting, fans, AC, equipment. This is what is causing the energy use in buildings, and 11% is because of the embodied carbon. This is a picture of India, and definitely we can see we're still hugely reliant on coal. And the second graph shows you the picture that 29% of the energy consumption is because of buildings. So our task, of course, is to reduce our fossil fuel emissions and make our buildings less reliant on fossil fuels and shift towards a renewable energy. Quickly to show you what is with educational buildings. So, in India, the educational building stock is almost 31% because we have schools and colleges dotted all over the country. And in terms of their percentage of energy consumption alone, it's about 13%. So educational buildings, occupy quite a big space. So changing each and every educational building into a green campus would actually, or affect this huge stock of buildings that are existing as well as which are, coming up. And also we must not forget that the way our classrooms used to be then and now is a huge difference. We are having better facilities now in terms of space cooling, in terms of lighting, but that will also mean that we are consuming more resources. So from this to this is the change. I'm not saying that the earlier classrooms were bad. They were in fact quite considerably designed for lighting and ventilation, and therefore they did not consume much. Nowadays, that consideration is not there. So we need to strike a balance while providing the best of facilities, while at the same time keeping in mind some of the natural elements to be integrated into design. So coming to the concept of what is a green campus and paperless office. So paperless office is part of a green campus. The various components, I would say, of a green campus include energy management, which is the operational energy of a building, the operational water use, which is the underground and the overhead tanks, which whatever they consume, and buildings actually, the school buildings do not actually consume a lot of water, but there is a lot of scope also at the same time to reduce existing water. Solid waste, you do generate a lot of solid waste, whether it is recyclable or recycled waste. So that is another aspect. There is a scope for having good visual and thermal and acoustical comfort in buildings, and I'll show you an example towards the end. Indoor environment quality. This can be poor in some cases where there is not adequate ventilation, or there are materials which are emanating VOCs, volatile organic compounds, or some other suspended particulate matters or something like that. So we can do something about that. If there is some sort of pollution abatement, especially say air or noise pollution, that can be somehow we can create buffers inside the system, that can also be done. Increasing vegetation and biodiversity, that can certainly be done in any campus. Reducing our overall carbon footprint by assessing our individual as well as joint actions, such as transportation, use of various devices, and everything else. And we can make an assessment of how to reduce our carbon footprint. And of course, paperless office is also one of the components which will make the campus green. So since the title of our workshop or talk today is mainly on the paperless office, I will start with that. But before that, let's see what are the broad principles and goals. So we would like green campuses to be self-sustainable in terms of the natural resources, have minimal ecological and carbon footprint, have a holistic and systems-based approach, which means that we do not address individual items, but address the holistically all the issues related to environment and to the users and everything. If there is any kind of ecosystem imbalance, how that can be repaired should be looked at. Engaging with community, engaging the students, engaging the users, and somewhat striking a balance is the socio-cultural fabric. Circular economy, how we can look at how every item can be recycled, and then moving lastly towards nearly and net zero, whether it is energy, water, or waste. So the world is moving towards net zero, and we must also strive towards that. And it's not really that difficult, which is what I want to show you. Coming to the first thing, that is paperless office, I just wanted to share with you a few stats. The definition of a paperless office or paper-free office is a work environment which uses minimal physical paper and instead has transferred everything into a digital mode. So it uses digital documents. I mean, this idea is not at all new. It has been there ever since the personal computer came into place, and the whole idea of the personal computer was to replace all the papers and files and so on. But yet we have a lot of these files still sticking around in most of the offices. We have not yet managed to change that. So the corresponding some definitions related to paperless office include a paperless employee. So you can have paperless employees who do not use any paper. And all this can be achieved by a process which converts all your paper files into electronic files, which can be done by means of scanning. And there are many other software which help you to upgrade to this process called digitization. Benefits of going paperless, of course, that you first of all reduce your carbon footprint. You save the destruction of forests, which of course, as you know, is used for making the paper. You save time because you're not going through files and files of paper. It's easy to transfer information without having to take physically something from one building or one place to another. You can also have your own security much better than somebody can take your file, but it's there. Space will be much less used, and of course you're going to save money on all of these things. Just to go back into paper, what is it that why is it that we're looking at going paperless? So primarily, of course, as you know, wood is the major raw material that is used for making paper, but there are other things as well, such as recycled cloth, wood fiber, sawmill waste, etc. Especially in India, we rely a lot on this. But we also know that this pulp and paper production is a very resource intensive and highly polluting manufacturing industry because of the use of bleaching agents, chlorine compounds, liquid waste that goes into the ground or enters into the waterways and so on. There is also solid waste such as boiler ash and effluent sludge, and of course there is ink, dyes, and bleach. So all of these is why we are looking at shifting to something more sustainable. Of course, Madam Randive gave us some facts, but here are some more. So it seems that it takes 24 trees to produce 1 ton of fresh, non-recycled office paper. 42% of all global wood harvest today is still used for making paper. And countries such as US, surprisingly, and Japan are some of the highest users of paper today. Globally, of course, still the pulp and paper industry consumes is the 5th largest consumer of energy, and you use a considerable amount of water resources as well. So 300 to 400 tons of water is required to produce 1 ton of paper, and of course all of these other things such as bleaching reagents and so on, which we are afraid always goes into rivers, and dechlorinating them is actually a very difficult process. The Indian paper industry is very interesting. I mean, it is one of the oldest, like it's a century old. It provides employment to a huge number of people, of course. In India, a large number of farmers do agroforestry. That is what provides the wood. We get the wood from these. But we are also one of the few who use bamboo, which is a fast-growing grass. And we also use other non-conventional methods such as straw, bagasse, textile, and waste paper for the manufacture of paper. And all this is in comparison. We are also looking at we are second in line after China in terms of number of paper mills. Our forest cover is, as of 2019, 26.7%, and it should be 33%. So we cannot afford to destroy any more of our forests. So while there are certain things about the Indian paper industry, it still seems that the future, when we look at the future resources, we still have a big gap, and it definitely makes sense to switch from the paper to the paperless, and the more that we do, especially in the education sector, the better it will be. Just to give you an example here from paper that I recently read, a typical paper use of an engineering college for an exam. So according to the survey, the average tree gets converted into 12,000 A4 sheets. And for this particular semester, where the total number of sheets were calculated, it was found that we require almost 300 trees to run a semester. So that gives you a perspective, and that gives us what we are saving if we shift this whole examinations and all our other processes into paperless. So, of course, the trees also require time. Time is a factor in the natural world. So to grow and to mature. So we have to take into consideration these aspects. So what do we do if we want to switch to a paperless office? Of course, there are so many solutions already, the PDFs, the portable documents, there are e-forms, e-receipts are there today, which are acceptable. Emails have been around and everybody is using them. And it is accepted as an official document. Online payment modes, online databases and web servers. Nothing of this is new. Digital signatures also, which is accepted. All of this is, I'm sure, not new, but we need to put this into a process, into a methodology. And I have put here the 3 I's of how to go paperless. The first is make an inventory of all the processes that require paper. The second is look at implementation, innovativeness, as in what can you do? For example, in many colleges, there is a need for students to draft on paper. So obviously, what can you do? Or some people use that as some sort of design tools, or it is used in exams or attendance sheets, registers. So each one of them, if you make an inventory, first of all, of each and every process that in the college that requires paper, what are the innovative ways? And the innovative doesn't have any limit, because I can tell you 10 ways, but you and your group and your students can come up with maybe 30 or 50 ways in which you can change this process and make it very interesting. And of course, the most important thing is to have that implemented. In government offices today, the National Information Commission already provides a software called e-Office, which helps offices to go paperless and helps them to shift from paper to paperless. So this is already in place. Many municipalities are already doing this. So we come back to the other aspects of Green Campus. That was about paperless office. And here's the other aspects of Green Campus. And I'll go through them very quickly. So the first thing is about energy efficiency. So there are 3 things that one can do in terms of making a building energy efficient. One is to look at the retrofit of an existing building in terms of its envelope, its glass, glazing, its roof. Sometimes all of these things result in more energy use inside your building. Then also looking at equipment, because if you use high quality equipment, energy efficient equipment, you can reduce your energy consumption to a great extent. 5-star rated equipments are already available. And then finally shift to renewable energy for the balance, which can easily be put on your rooftop, and you can put it on net metering. That means you can sell your electricity. And already there are many colleges I know in Mumbai that are already doing this. And this would be a best way of reducing your overall footprint. Already there are quite a few buildings which I have seen which have gone into nearly zero energy buildings. Apart from that, in terms of daylighting, I've seen that a lot of buildings use artificial lighting, and therefore they're consuming more energy. So by simple retrofits, by simple changes, we can improve the quality of daylighting inside buildings, because that's one of the primary needs of students and teachers, having a good quality of daylight. There are other things that one can do, opening up skylights, opening up wells, light wells inside buildings in order to enhance the daylighting. The idea being that when you have enough daylighting, you're not going to use artificial light, or you're going to reduce your artificial light to a big extent. In terms of efficiency, there are all of these things that one can use. The efficient, you can go for LEDs, which is the most accepted today, or you can go for 5-star rated or brushless DC fans, or in terms of equipment, you can go for 5-star Bureau of Energy Efficiency, 5-star to 3-star, at least 3-star rated equipments to start with is a very good starting point. This is just to show you that in terms of all the energy lighting that we have, what kind of efficacy or efficiency it provides. And you can see that this light emitting diode is good. LEDs are good. The reason at the moment is that because they do not have toxic effects and the rated light is quite high, that is 50,000 hours. The compact fluorescent lamps which came in between have one issue, which is mercury, and that they have a shorter life. So overall, the shift is now towards LED, as you must have seen, is happening all over. This diagram, I just wanted to show you. I have not talked to you about the energy performance index, but you can see here that by changing from 2012 to 2018, this is an example of a 1 BHK flat, how by changing various energy efficient equipment, how the energy performance index, that is the energy consumed per square meter of area, was brought down from something like 144 to 77. That's almost 50%. And of course, this does not include renewable energy. If you do that, it can come to 30 or even less. And if you do passive strategies such as lighting, natural lighting, it can come even further down. The concept everywhere now is also nearly zero energy buildings, how one can go for nearly zero energy buildings, which is the Bureau of Energy Efficiency defines as having an energy performance index of 15 kilowatt hour per meter square per year. This is the definition given by the Indian government, but also internationally there is a commitment everywhere. The European Union, have all committed themselves to having new buildings which are all nearly zero or net zero energy buildings. We have one example in India, the Paryavaran Bhavan, which is India's first net zero energy building. In fact, this is a net positive building because it is actually giving back more energy to the environment than it actually uses. So one of the good examples, how they did it, they have used a very good natural lighting system. So each and every table gets natural light. There is no need for artificial light. A good amount of ventilation is provided. So less amount of cooling is required. And then after minimizing everything, they have used rooftop solar, which also shades the building. The second thing is water management. Water, after energy, water is the most important thing that we can look at. In fact, in the Indian context, probably water is more important. We can do rainwater harvesting in any place, which is basically the collection of water, rainwater, which falls on the rooftop as well as the surrounding site area, and collect it and utilize it. We can use water efficient equipment. So instead of 20 liters per flush, where you're going to use 3 liters per flush, that's a drastic reduction. So that can be easily done. It requires a little bit of investment. And then of course, if you have the space, why not go for water recycling? So you have in-house water recycling, use it for gardening and other things. Rainwater harvesting is fairly simple. There are only two ways. One is you can store it into a tank. That is, if you have the space for a large tank, because in Mumbai we get 2,200 liters of annual average rainfall, which is quite huge. In most of the Western Ghats and the Konkan region, we get 3,000. So we get a huge amount of rainfall in 4 months, and we need to find out how to store that. So we can do that, or if we can't do that, we can at least charge the groundwater, because today everything is concretized. We don't have any space for the water to go down, and as a result, the water just runs off, it overflows, it goes into the stormwater drain, and then goes into the sea. There is no absorption happening into the ground, no percolation, and therefore the groundwater that we were originally dependent on, the wells, etc., are no longer existing. So rainwater harvesting can be very simply done by identifying the different catchments. So your rooftop is a catchment, your lawn is a catchment, your road is a catchment, the various channels to take down the water and then charge it into the ground. Of course, there are some precautions that one must take before groundwater recharge. You must have a filter to clean all the dirt of the collected rainwater. Normally, rainwater is the best possible cleanest source of water, but it may have some other pollutants which may be on the surfaces. So one has to be careful. These are some examples, and there are numerous. I think more than 100 housing societies in Mumbai have gone for rainwater harvesting, where we have plenty of rainfall and it makes sense to go for rainwater harvesting. The other thing one can do is water efficient equipment, whether it is the taps, you just fit a small aerator, which hardly costs you anything, and it will reduce your water usage by 50%. Or, because sensor based taps may be a bit expensive, so you can simply add aerators. Instead of a single flush, which uses 20 liters, you can have a dual flush system, which has an option of 3 liters and 6 liters. In case of tall buildings, you can use pressure regulating valves, which will save any kind of leakages, etc., to happen. And in the gardens, instead of having your mali to pour the water, which is a big waste, a lot of evapotranspiration happens, and evaporation happens, and wastage of water, you can have drip irrigation, which will again be useful. In wastewater treatment, I consider the DWAT system, that is decentralized wastewater treatment system, as one of the best methods, because it doesn't use any active energy devices except for pumping. It doesn't use aeration, large aerators that we have, and so on. So it uses just biological means and natural means. It uses the roots of plants, etc., to just treat the water. One of the best examples of wastewater treatment system is a system called Living Machine, which was designed, invented by Dr. John and Nancy Todd several, I think, 20 years ago or something. And it has been now implemented in so many schools. It involves like huge, like drums containing different plants, different organisms like snails and so on. So each, depending upon the kind of waste, it will treat your water. And then what is happening is, in the school, the children also are wondering, what is this system? And they know that the wastewater is being treated right in the school itself. So this is the Oberlin College where it has been done. It has been done in numerous places now. The next thing is to go for zero waste campus. So of course, segregation of waste is the first step. Recycling of the organic waste by either doing a vermicompost or an organic compost. It's very simple. Like pits like this can be easily made in a small portion of the site. And of course, tying up with organizations, the Diwalas, etc., who will collect your recyclables. That's not a very difficult task. In order to communicate, it might be useful to make these kind of segregators in your college, which separate paper, plastic, metal, and various other waste. And of course, e-waste. We all generate e-waste, whether it is batteries, whether it is so many other gadgets that we have. We all generate e-waste. So tie up with a local company. There are many companies today, and they're all eager to collect your e-waste. So that is possible. And there are various other ways. I just showed you one way of organic composting, but there is also vermicomposting. If you don't have space, there is electrical composting. If you have good amount of waste, then you can even go for biogas. Biogas can be used for your canteens to cook. The gas can be used, so you can even think of that. So there are various things that can be done if you have enough amount of organic waste. Apart from that, we also have, you can look at what is the air quality index in your particular campus and how you can improve it by either improving the vegetation, creating buffers, measuring noise levels, and either avoiding them or reducing them by creating natural barriers, or even building materials which reflect or deflect or absorb that. And if there are any water bodies passing through your site, how you can improve or treat them. Indoor environment quality. One of the simplest tools for enhancing indoor environment quality is the plants. So you can have simple like these. I think all of you recognize these plants like Dieffenbachia amina or spider plant, the central one, or the money plant. These are plants which are known, have proven to not only improve the oxygen levels inside, but also absorb various pollutants. For example, one of the studies have shown that Dieffenbachia amina, it absorbed a huge amount of volatile organic compounds. So apart from the fact that you need to have good ventilation, etc., one of the things you can do is to add small plants to your living and working spaces. How to reduce your carbon footprint? Of course, the first step is to do an assessment of your energy and carbon footprint by looking at how much is your electricity consumption, etc. You can do it individually or at a college level. And then you can decide how do you want to offset it. Offset can be by, having vegetation, actually growing a lot of trees and plants, either on site or off site. You can have, this is actually a rooftop terrace garden. So this is a rooftop which actually uses solid waste. This is a green wall. So you can have green walls in your campus, or you can shift from a mode of transportation, which is private transportation, to public transportation, or to even bicycles. So these are various ways in which you can reduce your carbon footprint. There are many more ways by which you can reduce as well. You can enhance the vegetation and biodiversity inside your campus by creating ecological zones. There can be eco-sensitive zones within your campus where you can plant special kinds of trees which attract birds and butterflies. And all this can also serve as part of your curriculum, teaching students. They can be part of your research or some work that they do in order to, part of the green environmental campaign or something like that, or the green club or something like that. Let me show you quickly some of the standards that we refer to when we do the green audits and green campus. One, of course, now we are largely referring to the NAC criteria, because these are in NAC criteria 7. There are these requirements, that is that power requirement. If it is met by renewable energy sources, you get a good point. LED bulbs is an important aspect. If you're managing your solid waste, your liquid waste, and e-waste, then again there are points for that. Rainwater harvesting, you can introduce rainwater harvesting, and you can introduce other green practices which include energy efficiency, behavioral practices, low carbon, renewable energy, vegetation. All of these can be counted as green practices. And then green initiatives you can take up, and then differently able universal sort of facilities like ramps and facilities for all kinds of people. So generally these are the standards under the points under NAC. We also refer to NBC, National Building Code, for all the standards. This is chapter 11 of the NBC 2016, which introduced a whole lot of points related to green buildings and sustainability. Then we refer to the Energy Conservation Building Code, the latest version 2017, which gives us minimum standards for a good design, energy efficient design of a building. So we refer to this one. We also have the commercial BE star rating. So we always compare the energy performance index of a school. So where does it stand with respect to whatever climate we are in? And there are green building rating systems also that we can award to schools. So there is the GRIHA, which is Green Rating for Integrated Habitat Assessment. There is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is an international accreditation. We have IGBC, Indian Green Building Council. We have the World Bank's EDGE. We have ASSOCHAM's Green GEM. These are all the rating systems, green rating systems that exist in India, and we can apply all of these or any one of these. Just to show you an example here, this is a green rated school, Good Shepherd International School in Uttakamand, Tamil Nadu, which has got IGBC Green Campus, IGBC Green School registration. So you can see what all they have done. For example, they recycle their water 400 kiloliters daily. They have 100 kilowatt of solar PV panels on the campus, which takes care, I believe, of 75% of all their infrastructure requirements, on-site infrastructure requirements, like outdoor lamps and so on. They harvest 15 lakh liters of water. Organic waste is done. They have created pedestrian pathways, 37% of green cover, health and well-being of the occupants is taken care of. So these are some of the green measures that one has taken in order to get, and this is a platinum. Platinum is the highest level in terms of getting green rating. So this is what can be done by each and every school. There are you must have seen this, the green school, IGBC green school. This is for existing schools, so you can also do that. Now, quickly to take you through the process, what all is needed to be done, what are the steps that we usually take up. So the first step is an environmental audit, which looks at historical data, which looks at a screening and walkthrough audit, which uses various tools in which energy, water, waste, all of these are sort of audited on site after getting in all the data, and then a detailed investigation and analysis is done, and then a documentation and a report is prepared. So this is basically the methodology which I already told you. So, and then we come up with the final documentation and report. So each and every, there's a stepwise method of doing this. These are some of the instruments that we use for doing an energy audit. And then finally, what you get, feasibility. We give you the feasibility. So you can see here, for example, these are three different colleges. One of the things that we get to see is which area of your college is consuming more energy. Is it the lights? Is it the air conditioning? For example, in this college, you can see it's 74% is the air conditioning. And that's one of the reasons its EPI, Energy Performance Index, is literally 555 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. But generally there are others which have low. So, but what we give you is this index. Where do you stand in this index is what we show you. Apart from that, we also look at, what kind of air conditioning systems do you have, and where do you stand with respect to all of that? What kind of lighting systems you have? What kind of lighting power density you have, and does it match with the energy conservation building code standards? What kind of natural lighting, does it meet with the NBC code with respect to the amount of lux levels falling on the working plane, whether you fall within the standards or not? So these are the way we take a 9-point grid in which the lux levels are measured, and we see how many spaces in your college actually fall within the category or not. Fire safety measures don't actually come inside the green audit, but they are also actually equally important, especially because they are somewhat a part of an energy audit. Electrical safety is very, very important aspect. So this is part of the fire safety is also an important component. In terms of output, so we give you that if you say, for example, change this kind of lighting to this kind of lighting, what is the cost, what is the payback? So you can see the payback is something like 8 months, which means that whatever you invested, you will get it back within 8 months. Similarly, if you shift from say single flush to dual flush, what is it going to cost you? And what is these projected water savings, and what will be, so in some cases like water, we cannot give a payback, mainly because cost of water is very, very low, it's negligible. We also give you layout of a rainwater harvesting system, what you can do given your current conditions, like in this case, percolation pits, recharge pits, rainwater storage tanks, and so on. What is best possible within the campus? And then something like this, where you have the annual energy savings is so much, your payback, simple payback is 1 year and 4 months, and this is the cost that you are going to invest. So that kind of an overall picture is what we give you. Lastly, I want to show you some case studies. The first case study I want to show you, I know there's very little time, so I'll quickly rush through this, is a building where we worked on improving the thermal comfort of the building. So this is the college building where we retrofitted the 6th floor of the college by changing certain things, like we added from brick walls, we changed to dry walls. We painted the roof with the high albedo paint. We introduced these turbo ventilators. We had radiant barrier under deck insulation. So all of this, of course, with a very clear intention of reducing the inner temperature of the building so that people feel comfortable, and therefore they can, be more productive, and the energy consumed from fans and AC can be much, much reduced. So we used all of these things. Apart from that, we changed the overall configuration. So this was a more of an interior design sort of a exercise, interior design as well as for thermal comfort. So cross ventilation, stack ventilation was all enhanced. So you can see this was what is before and how we enhanced the stack ventilation in the building. Then we changed the overall thermal transmission of the roof, which was a major source of heat, from something like 4.64 watts per meter square Kelvin to 0.03 watts per meter square Kelvin. So that, of course, reduced to the overall heat gain inside the building. So you can see these are before and after pictures, before and after pictures, before and after pictures. So, you know, the volume of the space was increased, mainly with an idea of increasing the stack ventilation and providing more natural light, reducing the heat gain from the roof by using an underdeck insulation, and so on. So the results that we found was that there can be easily a reduction of about 12.6 degrees centigrade in the roof bottom temperatures within pre-retrofit and post-retrofit. That was a difference that we found, which was significant. I mean, and that of course reduces the overall mean radiant temperature inside the building. The second example, which is probably known to all of you, is the Empire State Building. It's an existing building, and what can be done. The best example is the Empire State Building. It's a building developed in the 1930s. So it didn't have any energy considerations for such a huge building. So what was done was a project was undertaken to reduce its energy consumption. So by using various methods like, the building windows, about 6,500 windows were changed from single glazed unit to triple glazed unit. So each of these measures, so the chiller plant became smaller and so on, and totally a 38% reduction for a building like this, it means a lot. So was achieved in this case. So that was one of the examples. A couple of good examples of buildings I just want to quickly show you. This is the Potter School of Environmental Studies in the, part of Tel Aviv University, a completely green building. Some of its features, you can see the south wall is entirely made of solar vacuum tubes, which are running on solar, and they're providing cooling for the building. There is a system of natural passive ventilation. So it takes natural ventilation into the building. Fresh air is taken inside the building, so it's not stale air at all. And this is a wastewater treatment system right in front of the building. So in the front of the building is a wastewater treatment plant which treats the waste of the building. You can see all the furniture is mostly recycled. And there are some unique features of the facade as well. And this is the terrace roof garden. So this is an example. And I wanted to show you an example of what I have done here in Gujarat. We had to design a toilet building, and what was more, we tried to incorporate all of these pictures like light, ventilation. This was done together with an Israeli industrial designer, Tamar Akko. So all of these features were incorporated, like, what kind of materials, how the design is most suited for the students. And of course, the students themselves were involved in the whole process. And you can see light, ventilation, all of that was taken care of. So I think that is more or less towards the end of my presentation on Green Campus. And I thought that I would like to share this message that being green is beyond buying eco products or something like that. It is basically your own commitment to a sustainable lifestyle. So it's not just the things that you can change or the technology that you can change, it's also your own commitment. So what you can do on a daily basis, small things will make the difference. And I think that is something that we can do every day. We don't need to wait for World Environment Day for that. And so our idea is to give back to the environment, make it net zero. So that is, we always should go towards making net zero, whether it is water, waste, or energy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this was today's fantastic resource person, Dr. Roshni Uddavar Madam, who has helped us with all her technical details, also ground level expertise on the topic of paperless office and Green Campus initiatives. There are n number of benefits for being and having a paperless office, like increasing productivity, eliminating storage space, reduce expenses, ability to work remotely, enhance customer services, increased security, improved disaster recovery protection, improving your competitiveness in industry, as well as the most important factor of reducing your environment impact. So the talk was extremely studied with your ground level expertise and also our day-to-day requirements, how we can really make the environment friendly initiatives at our workplaces as well as our residences. Thank you so much. After this, I would like to request my colleague, Ms. Pankti Gosalia, to conduct question answer session. Over to you, Madam Pankti.
Thank you, Savita. Yes, Roshni ma'am, we've got quite questions for you to answer. The first question is, how much will the cost be to convert into a green campus, ma'am?
Okay, so converting into a green campus depends a lot on where you are right now. So as I mentioned to you, the process of audit is important. That's the first step. So you know where you stand and how much you need to do. So that's the first step. Now, I would say among the various things that are most urgent. So whenever we provide recommendations or what needs to be done, we divide them into phases. This is the most important thing. Say, for example, sometimes in a particular campus, the electrical safety is not there. So that is the most urgent thing, because not only it is important from fire safety perspective, but also it improves the total performance of energy efficiency of the building. So that is first phase. So first phase wise we give. So if you look at the costing, it depends upon, so I would say it can range from something like as less as 25,000 for a rainwater harvesting structure where you just don't need to do much, but just collect it and put it into the ground. That's if you have an existing bore well and you need to charge, it would hardly take you anything. To something like say 7 to 8 lakhs if you want to go for replacement of all your electrical fixtures. But if you have already replaced your electrical fixtures to LEDs, then it would cost you much less. So the payback, I would say, for something like electrical fixtures and everything is not more than a few months, or to maybe about 1 or 2 years at the most. So the cost would go to something like 50 lakhs or so if you were to go for renewable energy. If you have terrace space and if you want to put solar panels, then the cost can go. So it ranges from as little as 25,000 to say 8 to 10 lakhs to 50 lakhs or more. It depends on what you are going to do. But as I always say, go in phases, do small things that are easily doable, do the next step, because today you also have facilities by under various government schemes in which you can go for renewable energy resources and so on. So whatever is possible, small things like putting up plants inside your campus or inside your spaces do not cost you anything. So I would say the answer to that question is it can cost you nothing at all, sometimes to up to 25,000 to 10 lakhs to even 50 lakhs. So that is the huge range. And you can do it in a phased manner always.
Thank you, ma'am. So ma'am, the one more question related to this question only, how can we minimize it? So I guess, as you said, in phases, right? I mean, that's what you answered. Yeah, thank you. What are the benefits of Green Campus?
Of course, now I see that the benefit is in terms of your accreditations, which was not primarily a concern before. But now I see that more and more of colleges are looking at getting their NAC accreditations and getting better points in their NAC accreditations if they have done some of the sustainable initiatives. So definitely that is one point on the agenda of what benefits you have of doing green buildings. But of course, you are reducing your resources. So you're reducing your energy consumption and therefore your energy bill. And then you're reducing your footprint in terms of your water, and you're reducing the impact on the environment because you're not sending all that waste outside your campus. As I said, we try to become self-sustainable units and not try to depend on whatever is available within the site to provide water, to even have the rooftop solar, for example. So that is one way in which we can totally be dependent, self-dependent.
Thank you, ma'am. The next one, what are the steps to be taken by colleges towards going green?
Okay, so first step is to assess where you are. Where do you stand in as a green? I know that lots of colleges have taken a whole lot of initiatives, they have done, most of them have done solid waste management. You have done rainwater harvesting, or so first step is to assess in terms of, like I showed you, the energy charts. So what is the EPI of this college, energy performance index, and is compared to the standard, where do we stand? So once you know, you may be already good, but you don't know how good you are. So once you need to assess how good you are or how bad you are. So that's the first step. The second step is to look at, okay, if I need to improve in all the areas, from water to waste to energy to everything, then what are the various steps I can take, and look at the cost and the feasibility of that. So look at various vendors who can support, and making a cost feasibility analysis. That's the second step. And then finally implementing it in phases as per your convenience or as per your ease of implementation. You can start implementing the various factors, and then you can go for excellence. At that stage, I would say you can even go for some ISO certifications and so on. That's the last stage after you have because you need to make management changes at that stage if you want to go for ISO certifications.
The last question, madam. What sustainable practices students can follow on their individual level to make the campus green?
Okay. So students can do lots of things. They can take lots of initiatives. For example, waste is one area, especially e-waste. I have seen colleges also where people get e-waste from their houses, and they make it, and they have some collection boxes in the college where they collect it, and then there is some coordination with a vendor or a company which comes and collects it. So at students level, definitely they can try to bring in all the waste together, which would otherwise go into the dumping ground. In terms of water, they can probably look at reduction. If they see some leakage somewhere, they can point it out to the management, to the administration. Or if there is some way in which they can do some exercises in the school, like rainwater harvesting measures can be designed by students if they have the expertise, or maybe guided through the faculty, they can do this. And then of course, in energy, there are lots of things that one can do. Energy efficiency. They can create visual communication tools, methods by which it can be communicated to everyone, switch off the lights before leaving, or they can themselves monitor, who's the last person in the class who leaves, always shuts off the lights, and check everything on their own, be more responsible citizens. I would say that would be a good first step for students to start with.
Thank you, ma'am. That's it. Over to you, Savita, madam.
Thank you so much, Madam Pankti, as well as Madam Roshni, for this wonderful question answer session. And of course, there are many questions popping up, but due to shortage of time, we really cannot entertain all these questions. But I'm sure your talk has really enlightened all the participants to have this initiative on their minds. There is a short announcement for all of the participants. Please fill the feedback link. I request the technical team to share the feedback link in the chat box on YouTube. Everybody, whoever wants to receive the certificate for attending and participating in the webinar, they should fill the link and kindly wait for next 2-3 working days to receive your certificates. Thank you. After this, I would like to ask our team member, Dr. Sachin Bumbe sir, to present the summary of the session as well as for the formal word of thanks. Over to you, Dr. Sachin Bumbe sir.
Thank you, Savita madam. Good afternoon to one and all present here. I wish you all a very happy World Environment Day. As W.H. Davis has rightly said, what is life full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. Yes, it's very true. We have no time and we can no longer neglect the environmental damage. It is affecting almost every walk of life. And therefore, it has become imperative for all of us to rethink about our priorities, our choices, our lifestyle, infrastructural development, and our work culture as well. It's the right time to reconnect with nature and to redesign our spaces as well. I'm thankful to Dr. Roshni Uddavar Madam for making such an enlightening and thought-provoking presentation. In her presentation, Madam focused on every important aspect that is related to create a green campus. She rightly mentioned that we need to adopt eco-friendly approaches to make our domestic and workplaces more sustainable and resilient. The empirical data that she provided about carbon emission was quite shocking, and it is an alarming bell for all of us to be more responsible and adopt eco-friendly approaches. Well, the presentation was very insightful, and I would rather say it was an eye-opening session for all of us. Having said this, I would like to proceed to propose formal vote of thanks. At the outset, I express my sincere gratitude to all the trustees of SPRJ Kannashala Trust, Managing Trustee Mrs. Mirabin Khitani Madam, our Director Dr. S. Kumudavali Madam, for their encouragement and support in all our endeavors. I will express my sincere thanks to the captain of the ship, the guiding force behind this endeavor, our dynamic leader, Principal Dr. Asha Menon Madam, for her constant encouragement and valuable guidance. And I must put on record my heartfelt gratitude and honest appreciation to Dr. Roshni Uddavar Yehuda Madam for enlightening us with her insightful presentation and directing us to the clear roadmap towards our future. It was indeed an eye-opening session for all of us. Special thanks to Ms. Hashmat Khan for providing excellent technical support for the smooth proceedings of the program. My thanks are due to all the vice principals of all the faculties, coordinators, IQAC coordinator Mr. Raju Chauhan sir, and all my colleagues for extending all possible help and support to us. And I'm lucky that I am surrounded with the people who are very energetic and positive. That includes Dr. Rekha Randive Madam, the head of the NAC Criteria 7 team, and the other members, Dr. Manisha Parelkar Madam, Ms. Amrita Bahel Madam, Mrs. Savita Chauhan Madam, Mrs. Malti Singh Madam, and Mrs. Pankti Gosalia Madam. I'm thankful to all of them for their untiring efforts. Last but not the least, a big thank you to all the valuable participants who attended this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone on and off the screen. Thank you so much. Over to you, Savita ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sachin Mumbe sir. In all, you have presented a gist of all the stuff that we were on the various thoughts about being paperless offices and having green campuses. Thank you everybody for being connected with us. Hope we all will have these thoughts forever on our minds and will try our level best to celebrate the Environment Day every day. Wishing you all again a very happy Environment Day from SPN.